The best way to learn is to teach. But we've never really explored why, and I decided to do so.
That's one of the cool things is that learning quickly isn't some innate thing that people are just able to do. Some people just learn quickly, other people don't. There's an approach to doing it.
Choose one path and choose it for a while. It's not a forever thing, but you need to make a decision. Every day you wait to take action is a day you're not learning. And those mistakes that you are worried about making that you think are going to derail you actually become the guardrails that you move within. And so I started to commit to action over information. It's not rejection, it's redirection.
Pat Flynn is a best-selling author and one of the most influential voices in digital entrepreneurship. Through his diverse portfolio of businesses, award-winning podcasts, newsletters, YouTube channels, and thriving online communities, Pat teaches and inspires millions of people each month. He's the founder of SPI, an online community for digital entrepreneurs, co-inventor of the Switch Pod, and host of the Deep Pocket Monster YouTube channel, as well as founder of Card Party, a large-scale live event for the community of Pokemon collectors. Part of the bricks that helped to build the Model Health Show were handed to me from you. You're gonna take this, all right? You're gonna take this. When we started this show, there were so many questions. We didn't know, like, how do you publish? What do you do with all this? What's the distribution? You had a roadmap for us virtually, right? You were a virtual mentor for us. And we utilized your approach and got the show published. And over time, and per my first tweet to you, once we were the #1 health show in the country the first time, and I said, Pat, thank you so much. Your knowledge helped us to be the #1 health show. You replied back something to the effect of, Shawn, that's amazing, but that wasn't me. You know, you couldn't have a #1 show without you creating something really awesome. And that really speaks to your humbleness, right? Even though you are this incredible, great man, you're so giving, you're so humble, and you're one of the best people that I know. And I'm so grateful to have you here. I'm so excited. I've been excited all day. I've been giddy like a schoolgirl, kicking my feet.
Didn't know you were going to start by trying to make me cry, man. Thank you for saying that. And in a way, through you and your superpowers, I've been able to also help contribute to people who've bettered their lives as a result of that. And that's what I think about my content and what I do. It's not just, helping people individually. It's helping people who also help a lot of other people. Right. Trying to lift everybody up through amazing people like yourself. So congrats on the show. The new studio is amazing. Dude, I love this.
Yeah.
So grateful to be here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, listen, you know this better than most. We are swimming in information. We are feeling overwhelmed, overburdened, and so many of us have aspirations. We want to get healthy. We want to take care of our bodies. We want to take care of our relationships. We want to create that dream business. And yet, because of all the information, we can feel overwhelmed and sometimes even this feeling of just drowning or feeling stuck. Mm-hmm. What in the world is going on right now?
Information overload is the new normal right now. And, I'm not a scientist or anything like that, but it's kind of obvious that we have not evolved to be able to consume this much stuff that not only are we voluntarily consuming, but stuff that's getting forced down our throats, right? Now, information used to be valuable because not all of us had access to it, right? Remember Encyclopedia Britannicas? Like if you had one in your home, you were like smarter because you could afford additional info that other people could not. The smartest kid in the class was always rewarded. And if you knew more, you were more powerful. Not anymore, because we all have access to literally the same information on our phones and ChatGPT and AI and all this stuff. It's just leveling the playing field for what we have access to. And if information were the answer to all of our worries and problems, wouldn't we all be where we want to be? We're not. Like you said, we're drowning in it now, and we don't know how to handle it. Like we're treating information like it's a scarce food source, right? Like back in the day, if you come across like a bush with food or a carcass or something, and you get it all because you might not come across another food source for a while. So you absorb those calories so that you can survive. But we're treating information in the same way. So when we come across something that may seemingly be valuable, we don't really put it through any filters. We just download it. We absorb it. And as a result, of course, we have less time to do other things because we're learning feels like we're making progress, but we're also getting over-inspired. We're getting pushed and pulled in so many different directions, right? How is inspiration bad? It's bad because you've said yes to one thing, and before you even finish or follow through with that, you're already saying yes to this new thing, and you're getting pulled every which way. And it's hard because we are on social media and we have access to everybody. And so how do we control that? How do we define in our lives what matters and what doesn't? That's the real trick here. And over the years, I've developed a way that I've approached a lot of things and the information that I've been bombarded with to selectively choose the right things to help me in the path that I want to go down. So that's why I wrote my book, because a lot of people have asked me just again and again, how are you able to do all the things that you do? Because I've done a lot of different things and I've supposedly done them pretty well enough to impress people, I guess, to then ask, like, are you just good at everything? No, I'm good at learning quickly, skill acquisition, but speed run. And I think now is the time to have this conversation, because the way we are learning is for an older world.
Yeah.
We're in a new world now.
And that's one of the cool things, is that learning quickly isn't some innate thing that people are just able to do. Some people just learn quickly, other people don't. There's an approach to doing it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, really, it's this idea of understanding what just in case information is, which is what we're all absorbing, just in case, versus just in time information, right? Knowing where you want to go, but within that, knowing what the next step is and just mastering that, learning from people who talk specifically about that, reading a particular chapter of a book just about that. For example, my very first business in 2008, I sold a study guide for architects to pass an exam. And I'd never sold anything before. So my mind immediately, this was after getting laid off, my mind immediately was like, okay, if I want to do successful in business, I have to go to business school, right? It's like, I have to learn more in order to be good at this. But I had something at stake. I moved back in with my parents and I was about to get married. I didn't want to still live at home and raise my family that way. So I was motivated to figure things out quickly, right? And so, for example, I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to publish it. I didn't know how to make sales online, but I knew that I had to get something on paper. So that's what I did. I just opened Microsoft Word, wrote down all my notes, and it was just in sort of a long format. And I said, okay, now that I have all this here, I need to know how to format it. I don't know how to format things. I've never done this before. Let me go watch a YouTube video, because that's the answer I need right now, and then implement that. And cool, now I have this manuscript that's laid out in a landscape style, 2 columns. I'm now more motivated than ever to keep going, because I've already had something that I didn't before. Versus before, I would have overlearned everything, the whole process, and probably just confused myself out of it and never took any action at all, which is what most of us do when we're trying to learn how to do something new. We talk ourselves out of it. And then, of course, I never sold anything, so I needed to figure out how to do that. So I found a tool that allowed me to put a button on my website, but I needed a sales page. I'd never written a sales page. I wasn't a copywriter, but I found a book. It was called Moonlighting on the Internet by Yannick Silver. And this book is made up of, 25 to 30 different ways to make money on the internet, everything from selling on eBay to whatever. I didn't need any of that. I just needed the appendix in the back, which included a Mad Lib style sales page where I can just plug and play my own product. That's the only thing I needed from that book, and probably one of the most valuable books I've ever read, because that piece right there that I then put on my website helped me earn over 7 figures from just selling a study guide to architects. And I didn't do that by learning everything and getting overwhelmed. I did that by piecing it out, learning just those singular pieces, and then moving on to the next. And today, as opposed to back then, there are more resources than ever, right? If you take this iterative approach of just-in-time learning, you have to trust that by the time you reach that next phase where you need new information, that it will be there, because it is. And by the time you need it, it's probably better than if you were to get it up front. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
This isn't revolutionary. This is just rethinking how we approach learning, because we're just so absorbed with everything. Like, I remember I was at an event once of people who were business owners, and I asked the audience to raise their hand if they were subscribed to a podcast. And almost everybody in the audience was subscribed to one podcast. I said, okay, keep your hand up if you're subscribed to 5 or more podcasts. Hardly any hands went down. Keep your hand up if you are subscribed to more than 10. Some hands went down. And by the time I got to the end, there were still dozens of people who were subscribed to 50 plus different podcasts.
Yeah.
And it's like, what else are you doing in your life other than just consuming all this stuff that's now confusing you? Or is it just entertainment, right? Are you feeling like you're making progress simply by learning? Or rather, would you rather learn by doing, which is the whole point of this, right? If I were to sum up this book, Lean Learning, in a couple words, it's just like, just do. I can't say just do it because somebody else owns that. So.
Come in and swoop.
Yeah.
Swoop you up. Man, you know what? This applies so deeply to, yes, our personal development, but also with our health and fitness in particular, because more than ever, there are all these conflicting voices and perspectives, and there's no shortage of, controversial approaches and very simplistic approaches. And what we can find ourselves doing is just, again, consuming all this information instead of applying things. And I'm a big advocate of, and also so many of the things that you talk about in this book was my approach, was the way that I went about things unconsciously. You basically laid this roadmap out of your success, of many of the successful people that you know, but, being able to choose a guru, or maybe two gurus, right? You don't have to call them gurus. You can call them mentors. You can call them whatever. But just choose one or two people. Don't follow everybody.
Right.
Don't follow everybody.
But he might have one thing that would change everything for me.
One thing.
So I need it all. So I can pick and choose. And the problem is you're not going to be able to manage that. Right. So I love that. Pick one mentor or two to learn from, somebody who shares the same values as you, who is living the same life you want to live, or has the same body that you like, whatever it might be, and then tune everything else out. Now, the struggle is we have FOMO. So a lot of this book and learning what to do and who to learn from is what's happening up here. We're fighting against ourselves. So when it comes to absorbing information, we have this fear that we might miss out on something important, right? So here's the strategy to solve that. You take those things that are important, that are coming your way or seemingly important, and you put them through a filter. Is this important for me right now? And if not, you put them into like a virtual shoebox, a Notion board, or an Evernote, or whatever it might be, or Apple Notes. Just put them away so that your brain can move forward. And what's funny with me and my students who I share this tactic with is 99% of the time, you will never, ever go back to that. It's just simply a mechanism to move forward from it so you can start doing. And by the time, again, like I said, you need that information, there's probably something better and more relevant that just came out. So.
Yeah. And this wasn't something that, you just automatically did. You also found yourself being an overlearner, especially in those beginning stages. And you shared that story of meeting with your business coach, and you had all these notes. You had notes on notes on notes. You were just consuming all this information, podcasts and books, and his input. But you had one of those moments.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I had a business coach because, again, I go to mentors to help me and hold me accountable. And back then, I was a hoarder of information for sure. And I had my notepad, and I wrote every single word down. It was almost as if I was like in school again, right? Where I draw a line on the left hand side, and like the right hand side is the notes, and the left hand side are just like the outlines. Like I was literally approaching it the way I was taught in school. And then he eventually, after he was teaching me stuff, he was like, "Okay, put the notepad down. Here's what you need to do." And I was like, getting ready to write this down again. He's like, "Just freaking get started." And he said it in a much more serious tone, and he used a different F word. And I started to write that down. And he was like, "Stop. Like, you're literally overlearning. You are replacing this feeling of doing by writing stuff down all the time. Just get your book written." And this is the architecture book that I was talking about. And so I started to commit to action over information at that point. Because by then I already knew everything I needed to know. Everything new was just an opportunity to cloud the action that I was supposed to be taking. So I was very grateful for that aggressive approach that he took that day, because he was never like that before. And I think that's why it stood out to me more. He literally yelled at me. And sometimes we need to get yelled at.
Tough love.
Yeah, tough love. My wife will tell you that, that's for sure. She yells at me. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, babe.
Right. Caveat. Yeah. Caveat alert. Just to be clear. Well, this leads us perfectly to, again, you sharing in a very concise, easy to consume, fun, but also repeatedly action-oriented new book, Lean Learning. So I want to break down these pieces because we are in a information war right now. it's just flying by us 24/7. There's no escaping it. And we've got to be strategic. We've got to take control of our minds, whether we want to create the body and the health that we want, the relationships we want, the business that we want. There's a way to go about it in this world today, and we need to be intentional, because if not, and I know many people listening have felt that overwhelm and just all of this stuff and just feeling like I have to know more, or even just a lot of junk as well. And I know you're going to talk about that, a lot of junk inputs that we can come in contact with. Yeah. And so I want to break down these sections of lean learning and start off with selective curiosity. And this is, again, when you described it, I was like, oh, that's what I did. Let's talk about selective curiosity.
It's good to be curious, right? That's how we grow. That's how we learn. When we grow up to be adults, sometimes that curiosity is stunted, right? When we normally would want to ask why, we stay silent, because the little kid who asks why all the time, who's trying to learn, we tell him, hey, just stop saying that. Like, just do what I tell you, right? Yeah. But the why, that's how we learn. However, again, with access to everything, being too curious means you're never going to do anything. And so it's important to, as you come across different inspirations, to put them through a filter to understand whether or not they're worth continuing or opting out of. Right? We had this FOMO thing that we talked about earlier, right? The approach to combat that is not the joy of missing out, which some people say. The counter to FOMO is not JOMO, because that's just kidding yourself. I'm not going to be joyful that I'm missing out on this. The joy of opting out is the answer. By basically saying, okay, I see that, I recognize it, but not right now. Yeah. I'm going to opt out of this, which does what? It re-opts you in to the commitments you've already made. You are saying yes again to the thing that you said you were going to do. But in the beginning, if you're not quite sure, putting these things through a filter, and in the book, there's this thing called the inspiration matrix, where you have it up there, which is great. And it's important to have a balanced sort of matrix of things that you are interested in. And there's different components to this. So the first quadrant in the upper left is going to be your recreational inspirations. These are like hobbies and things like that, things that you don't necessarily want to turn into a complete passion or a business or something like that. But just, it's important to have at least one thing in there, because I found that when entrepreneurs especially don't have anything in their recreational inspiration quadrant, when they're just grinding on stuff, they're not able to escape that and recharge. And so it's important to have a hobby or something like this, and to recognize if you are overworking yourself, to have some breathing room. So for me, it's fishing. And for a while, like, I'm picking up golf again, which is great. Gardening during the pandemic was a big recreational inspiration. I'm not passionate about gardening, but it is something that I enjoy doing. And I was able to get my kids involved with that too, so they could finally eat their veggies, because they grew it instead of just like force feeding them, which was great. So we use that as sort of education for the kids as well. But if you zoom out and you consider that you don't have the thing that you could look forward to escape your normal life or the thing that you're grinding on, then that's going to be a problem. So finding at least one thing in there to focus on. And then, of course, within that, you want to get good at it. You want to learn, and you can use lean learning to get better, just like how you can use lean learning to get better at gardening, like I did, right? I learned by making mistakes. I planted seeds too close together and they didn't have room to grow, right? Or certain types of seeds that I planted in San Diego weren't able to do as well as other plants, right? In different times of the year and those kinds of things. And you learn by making mistakes. And there's a lot of metaphors to gardening in life too, pruning and, not putting too many seeds in the garden. That's the perfect metaphor for what we're talking about here, right? You put too many seeds in there, there's just going to be no room to really grow. So we've learned to create specific raised bed gardens for crops like tomatoes. 2 tomato plants per raised bed, and we can get a yield that lasts all summer. It's incredible. The next quadrant over are going to be your passion pursuits. These are the things that you cannot stop thinking about, that you are dreaming about, that you are sacrificing a lot of things to do and try to make work. For many people, it's certain businesses or certain organizations that you might be a part of that you just want to have work out, and learning and understanding what those are important, because that's where you're going to put most of your time. That's where we get a lot of joy back, right? The investment into those things is a reinvestment into yourself.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have your junk sparks. And this is where we get into a lot of trouble. This is where when I run this experiment and filter through a lot of people, we find that most of the things that they're doing are in the junk spark quadrant, which means at one point, it just was a spark, an inspiration that was like, ooh, that could be exciting. Let me dabble with this. And then within a week or two or a month, it's just kind of in the back of their mind and it's not going anywhere. And it's not just one thing usually. It's like 5 or 10. And these things are all things that we could put aside to make room for our passion pursuit or recreational inspiration. Oftentimes, the audit, the best benefit is to see what your junk sparks are and remove them from your life. Mm-hmm. There's a book called Essentialism that helps do something similar where you rank all the things that you're doing, right? And it's like the 9s and 10s you keep. The 1s and 2s and 3s are easy to remove from your life. But it's the 4, 5, 6, and 7s, the things in the middle that are kind of like, they're there, you kind of have a little bit of interest, but maybe not. Those are the hard ones to leave out and get rid of. But when you do that, that's a reinvestment, like I said, into those things that are more important. And then you have your critical commitments, the things that you have to do that you can't really get out of. It's a part of your role at work or your responsibilities. You might not enjoy it, but you have to do it. Making sure that's just not overloaded as well and that you have a balanced matrix of inspiration is important. And then when you get those inspirations and you want to get better at those things, then it's using some of the tactics in the book to fast forward that skill acquisition in many different kinds of ways, from surrounding yourself with the right people who have done those things before, right? Finding the 1 or 2 resources. Like when I learned how to speak in 2011, by the way, I was deathly afraid of speaking. You've seen me speak on stage before. I consider myself a pretty decent speaker now. But it didn't happen by reading about speaking. It happened by, number one, just getting on more stages. But when I started, I went to other people who I knew were speakers, a lot of people you know as well, Shawn. And I said, if you were to start over again, what's the one resource you would go to? And 2 or 3 people said, well, you need to read the book Stand and Deliver by Dale Carnegie. So although there were dozens of books, if not hundreds, on speaking, I was just like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one. I'm going to study it. I'm going to go deep on it. And that's what helped me not start perfect. Again, getting over that perfection is an important component of this as well. Again, we're fighting ourselves in a lot of this, but it got me started and it gave me a nice foundation to work off of. And then I hired a coach, Mike Pacchione, to help me speak as well. So I got into the mentorship game there and invested some money and time to, again, become a world-class speaker. And I've now gotten paid nearly 7 figures of speaking fees over the years, and I've spoken on 350 stages. And it's a craft that I absolutely love. But to get even better at it, right? Mastery is important to a lot of us, especially high performers. How do we master something? Not just get started with it and get decent. How do we master it? So in the speaking world, I wanted to become a master of it. And the way that I did that was through something I call in the book micro mastery. And that is taking all the little components that you need to learn how to do, breaking them out, and then focusing on one area at a time for a certain period of time. So in the world of speaking, for example, it was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to storytell. I'm just going to go deep into storytelling. Yes, there are slides. I need to know where to speak on stage. I need to know how to use my voice. I need to know how to get on these stages. I'll worry about those things later. But if I can tell great stories, I think that's going to be a high leverage opportunity for me to have all these other things just kind of naturally happen. So I studied stories. I watched TED Talks and just paid attention to the stories. I would write notes just about stories. I'd read about storytelling. I'd read about screenplay writing, all these devices that I could get. Again, learning a lot, but it was controlled about one thing. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to learn about storytelling for 2 months, and then I'm going to incorporate that into my next talk. And I've gotten pretty good at storytelling. Then after that, it got even to the micro level of what am I going to do with my hands? So for 2 weeks, I said, and it's important to give yourself an amount of time to learn so that everything else is kind of shielded outside of that. For 2 weeks, I studied hands. Just what do people do with their hands when they're on stage? I watched TED Talks and noticed how when people would kind of bring their hands close to their body, that they were in a more vulnerable state with what they were talking about, right? But if you wanted to get bigger and you're making a bigger point, you can use your hands to emphasize, and then you can even use your hands to selectively choose which parts of the talk that you're speaking or should hit home for people. Anyway, there's a lot of like tricks and little things like that you can get to that level. It reminds me of I remember a friend of mine, he's an ultra marathon runner. it's crazy. He runs like 50 miles a day or something like that. I don't know how y'all do that. And he wears those like toe shoes and stuff. Like, I don't know how you feel about that. I think you wear those, right?
I do.
Okay.
When I'm like training, yeah.
You like them?
Walking.
Does it feel weird?
Love them, man. I didn't talk about it for a year. I did it in private, in secrecy, so that I wouldn't lose cool points with myself. And I just fell in love with it. Whenever I go home after leaving the show, for example, I throw those on.
Really?
And I go walk. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. I'll have to try it out.
But anyway. Also, they got to be cool. We can still make them cool though, as well. That's the thing. That's the bridge. And so I got you. We're gonna make them cool.
Okay. I have a weird, like, my second toe is bigger than my. I don't know. Never mind.
Anyway. No judgment. Hey, all feet are welcome. Inclusive.
That's a different website. So this friend of mine, ultramarathon runner, his name's Ryan, he told me how he got better at running and got faster times. And it wasn't just by running 50 miles a day without sort of any conscious effort on different components of his running that he wanted to improve. So he said that for a month, he just focused specifically on how his feet landed on the ground. Right. And when you're running 50 miles, right, there's a lot of moments of that. So those little micro improvements that you make compound and can exponentially help your time across many miles. Right. So he hired somebody to slow-mo video his feet as he was running so he could study just how the feet landed on the ground. Right. He learned about that. He talked to people about that, and it was just micro mastering that. Then he focused for a while. I think it was like a couple months where he was really training himself by just focusing on breathing through his nose and expanding his lungs so that he could have more endurance. And like all this stuff that was like, that's such a small component of what it is. But like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, that 1% incremental improvement just begins to stack. And of course, once you master how your feet hit the ground and then master how you breathe, you can then focus on other things. And then this helps you become world-class at what you do. And even as a creator, as a YouTuber, this is what I do, right? For 3 or 4 months, my producer and I, we were studying thumbnails. That's it. Just thumbnails. There's a lot that goes into creating a YouTube video, but thumbnails are important. It's the first thing people see before they click a video. And we studied this. We went to classes to learn about thumbnails. We now have a thumbnail guy who we do photo shoots for thumbnails specifically and all this kind of stuff, right? And then we studied titles. We study storytelling again. Stuff that I learned from my speaking career has now gotten into the YouTube world with my Pokemon YouTube channel, which is blown up and a lot of people know me for now. And that's another thing like that I was able to do in a relatively short period of time, right? Have 1.5 million subs on a YouTube channel about something I didn't know about 4 years ago. Yeah. Thanks to the kids for getting me involved in that one too. But they kind of outgrew it and I did not. But yeah.
And I got to be there in the inception of the idea and to see it come this incredible level where, people are recognizing you in other countries. Like, are you Deep Pocket Monster? Yeah. Right? It's unbelievable, man. So cool. And, I want to ask you about this because this is that quadrant, when you split things up, it provides such a simple framework that will take us 5 minutes, to be able to do and just get stuff out of our head, write it down. But I think there's going to be a reservation because we are worried about doing the right thing. Like the passion pursuit. Am I choosing the right thing? I've got a lot of passions. Am I choosing the right thing? And you provide a solution for that too. In the book, you provide one of the coolest visualizations. This is something I've been doing for, about 20 years now. And I had my imagination station, right? I would bring up this screen and this beautiful setting and, I would run through the way that I would want things to go, right? Whether it's a day or whether it's an outcome for a project. And you take people and have us hop into the DeLorean and set the time where we can go into the future and see next year, when you focus on this one passion pursuit, this primary thing, what does your life look like, right? We can stretch that out even further. And so you get to, and you can also, if you're doing this the right way, which is being honest and feeling the feelings, like, is this leading me to the life that I really want? Or is this, or do I feel like this isn't right for me right now?
Yeah.
And I can choose, I can go hop back in the DeLorean and I could choose something else. I can go back and now I'm going to choose, what if I choose this thing? And go out, map that out, see what your future looks like. And that's the only way. That way, and also you're giving us permission, you said it earlier, such a huge part of learning is making mistakes, right? And I love this sentiment that it's not about making the right decision. It's about making the decision right. And so many of us are afraid to make if we're making the right decision or not. Whatever we choose, it's an opportunity to learn. And that can guide us to exactly where we want to be.
Yeah. I think it was Dan Martell recently said in a video, it's not rejection, it's redirection. I was like, man, that's good, right? And so for the 4 people in the audience who don't know what a DeLorean is, it's a time machine from the movie Back to the Future, which is my all-time favorite movie. And the exercise I run through my students with this, and I wrote about it in a previous book as well, and it has literally made people cry. It has made people angry, and it's also made people very, very happy. Why? Because the exercise, as you were explaining, is you know, of course, if you're making a decision, if in the book, it's like, okay, choose one path and choose it for a while. It's not a forever thing, but you need to make a decision. So sometimes with my students, the decision point is let's throw a dart at the dartboard just so we can get going, because we're just like, every day you wait to take action is a day you're not learning.
Yeah.
Right. And those mistakes that you are worried about making that you think are going to derail you actually become the guardrails that you move within. So those mistakes are important. You got to take action. But if you're worried or you're curious and it's important to do this exercise, you get into your DeLorean, you go 88 miles per hour, 1 year into the future. Things worked out the way you want them to, right? Like, don't worry about how that happened. It just is. Mm-hmm. 1 year from now, the business you started is rolling and it's exactly how you want it. The passion pursuit, whatever it might be, is doing what you want it to do. And you see yourself a year from now and you ask yourself, like you said, those questions, what's your day like? Are you fulfilled? Do you regret that decision or do you not? Who are you with and how are you loved? These kinds of questions that you can experiment with start to reveal some truths about the decision that you are about to make now, one way or another. And the reason some people have cried is because they realize that they are climbing the wrong ladder, that they are painting a future that, even if it were successful, is not where they want to be. So the crying happens because they're realizing they're in the wrong spot. But how much of a blessing it is to learn that now, right, versus a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. Other people get upset about that and that they've made the wrong choices. And for many people, that exercise actually confirms and validates that they are on the right path. In fact, it reinforces the whole why behind this in the first place, right? So for me, for example, I had played out that scenario in the mid-2010s, 2013, 2014, big in the blogging space. I was a top affiliate for a hosting company. That hosting company asked me to become a CEO of a company, of their company. They wanted me to come in because I knew I had the marketing skills and the name to go with it. It wasn't the company that I was promoting. It was a competitor company. And they wanted me to come in and be CEO. Lots of money. I would have had to move. I would have had a team of about 100 people under me, directors and their subordinates and everything. And I was like, if this works out the way I want it to, what would my day look like? Well, I'd have to wake up early, go into an office. I would probably sit at night and never fall asleep because I'd be worried about the servers failing and all my customers, because that's just how I am. Like, this is not a life that I want. And even though it would come with a lot of rewards, it just wasn't in alignment with who I was and my values and what was important to me. So it was an easy no. I opted out of that to re-opt into what was important to me at the time, which was designing a business around my family and my young kids at the time, and being there and being able to walk them to school when they went to school age. And every day until they were basically in middle school, my wife and I were both able to take them to school and bring them back home together. And I'm so happy that I made those decisions.
Yeah, that's so special, man. I shared this with you that just reading the dedication to your book, my eyes were welling up.
Let me see the book.
Here you go.
I'll read it for everybody because this is important to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I wrote a note in there for you too. So the dedication to lean learning is: to my children, as you stand on the threshold of adulthood, may the lessons in these pages guide you to learn with purpose, live with passion, and lead with integrity. As they are 15 and 12 now, they're entering a world that's very different than the one you and I lived in. Right. There's some pros and there's some cons. And one of the hard things is there's just so much. It's confusing and people are overwhelmed, stressed out, depressed. And with all the resources in the world, shouldn't we be equipped to be able to go wherever we want? Should be, but with the way learning is and education in schools and stuff, it's just slow to adapt to how quickly everything is moving right now. I mean, things are moving so fast when you think about where tech is going and all the things that are happening. If we don't change the way we're learning, we're going to get left behind. And I don't know if it's the robots that are going to take our place. And for some people in their jobs, that's already happening. Think about how we used to learn back in the day, like back in the day. If you wanted to learn to be a blacksmith, what did you do? Did you
apprentice?
Yeah, you found a blacksmith who would take you under their wing, and they would get you in the forge and have you hammering the thing. And that, obviously, I'm not a blacksmith. I don't know. I just keep saying the thing. I'm like, there is a world where we can combine the apprenticeship model and learning in real time, making mistakes in real time, and being okay with that, with the tech that we have today. That's my vision, is that there is some world that where that happens. And I think I'm starting to see some of this happen. There are some schools that are more experimental that I'm seeing where, you imagine 5 days a week in school. Well, not actually. It's 2 or 3 days a week in school. The other days, literally interning, working, getting your hands dirty, doing the thing. So I hope that this book at least starts a conversation there, or at least opens up people's eyes and the world. But even for you, the individual, like, what is it that you're doing? Are you learning about things and being fulfilled, or are you getting overwhelmed from all the things that you're allowing yourself to have access to? Because it's really going to be up to you. We're not stopping this content that's coming our way. There's more and more information being uploaded every single day, and that's not going anywhere. So it's up to us.
What do you think of that saying, jack of all trades, master of none?
It's false. I'm more of a Pat of all trades, master of fun, is what I like to say. The one thing strategy makes sense. That is the more well-known counter to just the overwhelm, right? Just focus on one thing. Alex Hormozi says it, right? And even then, he still writes books and even said like that. So he does a few things too, even Mr. One Thing himself. And then The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, that book, The One Thing. I have tried The One Thing, and I was unhappy. I was unfulfilled because I was curious. Mm-hmm. How could I pigeonhole myself into just one thing? I'd be miserable, because part of who I am is an explorer, a doer, a trier, a person who likes to play and experiment. So I've developed a strategy, which I talk about in the book, called the 20% itch rule. Allowing yourself 20% of the time that you have to play, to experiment. Take that curiosity, don't go crazy, but contain it. Mm-hmm. Between 2017 and 2019, my 20% of time, the itch that I was scratching back then, was an invention called the Switch Pod. And we were able to take this thing, an invention for videographers, a tripod where the legs kind of fold into each other so you could hold it. We'd never invented anything before. We took the lean learning approach to do it and make it happen. And in February of 2019, that launched to $415,000 made in 60 days. Between 2020 and today, my 20% of my time is the Pokemon thing. Now we have a YouTube channel with over 1.5 million subs, nearly 1 billion views, and in and of itself, it's its own business that's generating revenue through ads and brand deals. We even host an event called Card Party. Just a couple months from now, we have 6,000 people coming to Tampa Bay to nerd out on Pokemon, adults and families alike, and it's awesome. There's so much opportunity out there, but being able to learn in a container. And then the reason the 20% thing works is because even if that were to fail, you're still at least committed to the 80%. And if you look at the days of the week, that's Monday to Thursday is going to be the thing that you said yes to, the things that you're committed to. Give yourself Friday to play. That allows you to escape the Monday to Thursday. I really do hope we get into a more national 4-day work week. We practice a 4-day work week in our company, and it's been the most rejuvenating thing. People come back into Monday with more energy, right? And they're able to get the same things done in 4 days. And now they have their 5th day of the week to play or do whatever it is that they want to do, my team and I. And I failed many times, and times before that I tried to build a software company and that failed, but it was always a lesson. And the things that you learn from the mistakes that you make always stack into the next. So I don't know. I think it's good to be curious, but it's to be curious and not contain that is unwieldy. I think it's, what's the quote? It's to have vision without action is a dream. Action without control is a nightmare.
Action without information is chaos, but information without action is waste. That was in the book as well.
Similar, yeah.
You know, and just like there's so many sentiments throughout time, and many of the people that we are inspired by had figured this out, right? We're not here to be constant consumers of things. We're here to be creative. We're here to release. And so never before have we had the environment to be an overlearner like today. It's rampant. And so what happens when we're just consuming and consuming, you gave the analogy earlier, just the times are different now. When we would gorge if we came upon something that we can get some nutrition from, some calories from. And today, the environment that we're living in and that genetic thrust to do that, it's a mismatch. Yeah. And so thus we're seeing epidemics of obesity. The same thing holds true with the human mind and our desire to know and our curiosity. And we're in this environment with constant consumption and no processing, no metabolizing of the information, and especially no release or no action, no way to express the things that we're learning. And so we become constipated with information.
Yeah, it's a lot of shit.
It's a lot of shit that's not getting out here because we're holding on to it. And that's what lean learning is all about, is releasing your shit.
That's right.
All right.
I mean, that's why it's lean learning, because it has that little motif of, staying lean in what it is that you're consuming, right? Just like with food. But it's also, once you find the thing, lean into it, right? Don't just stay surface level, go deeper with it. And you cannot possibly go deeper if you're allowing other things to come in as well.
This applies so well for every area of our lives, and breaking it down into that inspiration strategy and the quadrants. And in particular, just for everybody to loop all this stuff in together when it comes to our health and fitness as well. Because that strategy of picking one guru, following through, and giving yourself room to play around with some other stuff, but still having that 80% that you're focused on, choosing one book to follow, one program, whether it's an exercise program, whether it's a nutrition program, whether it's the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook that you eat from for you and your family, and following those principles and stretching that out, jump into the DeLorean, visualize what does my life look like a year from now, right? And seeing if that feels right for you, giving yourself permission also. I love that, having that wiggle room and that 20%. That idea itself was so freeing to me because I'm naturally curious as well. I think we all are at some degree, but putting myself into this box where it's just, I have to do this one thing, it makes me feel constrained. But here's the rub. That is required for a level of mastery. And a certain level, especially today, I think that more people are really connected to excellence. Not just because there's so much junk. There's so many little...
Put 10,000 hours into it, right? Like that kind of thing.
Not even necessarily 10,000. You know this. It doesn't have to be 10,000. No. But just...
You can learn on hour one.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like somebody that we might have this frame like, they've been doing this for 25 years. Who am I? Life often isn't a respecter of time. It's a respecter of revelation, right? Can you really get that information and embody it? And also another part of lean learning is sharing, is teaching. Can you express that thing? Mm-hmm. And today, more than ever, we got a lot of people teaching shit that they might not necessarily really embody or know, but they might have a certain angle or a certain insight or a certain expression that resonates with people. And if we're getting the end result that we're looking for, what does it really matter?
Yeah.
So I want to go to the next one of these. And again, we're just having a little charcuterie board of what's in lean learning. We've talked multiple times already about action over information. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you about this one. And this one stopped me in my tracks when I was reading this chapter and just really hit my heart. Just felt the whole body warmth. We talked about the power of champions. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the people that I've been lucky enough to surround myself with. You included in that. We if you don't know, Shawn and I have been in a mastermind group together for over a decade, right? We're checking in with each other every single week. We help each other out. We are able to lean on each other, cry on each other's shoulder, but also like help each other out and give us tips and stuff and do fun things like this together. The human connection and the people-to-people relationships are so key. And there's different levels to that, right? And a champion is somebody who is there to support you. That's why I call them champions. They're championing you. And there's different levels to that. You have your emotional support from like friends and family. When I got laid off, I relied heavily on my wife, or my fiance at the time, now wife, to just provide some emotional support, that she was going to be there with me no matter what. And as I was falling into depression because of my job and losing it, she was there for me and was able to get me back on my feet, like really encourage me. But she didn't know about business. She didn't understand the language of learning about internet marketing and any of this stuff, but she was still able to support emotionally, which was huge. And then in the middle level, you have your peers and your colleagues, like you and I, right? We're both on our own tracks, but we can both share a lot of value between each other, and we both care for each other. And these are the people who we share a common language when it comes to podcasting and YouTube and all this kind of stuff and business. So we have a lot to share with each other. We can lift each other up, right? A rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what this is about. But then you have your mentors, either virtual mentors, people who you study and you kind of learn from them, you invest in them online or something like that, or physical kind of person, in-person mentor who's there to take you under their wing. And that is the most valuable. But some sort of crossover of all of them is really key to have a well-rounded support on your way up, because you can't do this alone.
Right.
And as you try to get better at something, there will be times where there will be other people who are going to try to take you down, right? We live in what I like to call the bucket of crabs often, where if you put a bucket of crabs, live crabs out, you don't ever have to worry about any of them crawling out, because as soon as one tries, the other crabs are going to take their claws and pull the other one back down. And we live in a world where we don't, a lot of people don't want to see us succeed because it defines where they're at and maybe, their shortfallings. So to surround yourself with other people who are going to lift you up is really key, right? Jim Rohn, I think, was the one who said you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So I always try to get in rooms where I can increase my average. You know what I'm saying? So finding those champions is key, locking in on that. And then there was a part of the book that I talked about, which was done in the research of it, which was really compelling to me because I had always been somebody who shared my goals out loud. And there's a lot of science and there's a lot of case studies and people have spoken about this idea of having an audience hold you accountable, right? Other people holding you accountable. And so I had once fallen into the trap, and I know a lot of people fall into this trap because of how easy it is to have an audience now, of sharing goals publicly. And when you share a goal publicly, like this thing you're trying to do or whatever inspiration you're trying to get good at, it often makes it feel like you've already accomplished it, because you have this crowd who's saying like, yeah, you got this. And you're kind of already getting those good vibes that you might get when you finally accomplish the thing before you accomplish the thing. And I think it was Derek Sivers, I believe, who did a TED Talk about this very fact. And I was, he's right. But there was a study out of Ohio State University that said sharing your goals publicly to people that don't really know who you are, but are more of an audience, is going to work against you. But when you share your goals with somebody who you value, who is a mentor to you, you will do the work to make that happen because you don't want to let them down. That relationship you have together is something that's now at stake by claiming you're going to do something. Just like when I tell my wife I'm going to do something, stuff's going to go down if I don't follow through. And so same thing will happen with a mentor, and that will encourage you to do the thing. So share your goals, but share it with somebody who you respect. Share it with somebody who is going to hold you accountable to that, who you do not want to let down. That's when that works really well. And those are the best kinds of champions to support you on your way.
Oh, man, I love that, because you actually share a section in The Truth about sharing your goals. And also, we want to be mindful of who we're sharing our goals with if they're in close proximity to us. Funny enough, I saw a clip from Tom Cruise today, and he was sharing that he, early in his career, he was sharing his goals about what he wanted to create, who he wanted to be, what he wanted to accomplish. And he felt like at the time, he was, of course, getting belittled. Like, what are you thinking? Like, you're just this. You can't do that. That's not possible. And so he was like, okay, that's cool. He had enough self-confidence to still maintain, his goals. But, for many of us, our goals they're sensitive. You know, they're fragile
Personal.
and people can come in and step on your dreams. And so being intentional about who you're sharing with, it's important to share. It's valuable to share, but sharing it with the right people, but sharing it with people who hold you accountable, that see your greatness and your potential, but also hold you accountable. And also being mindful of the publicly sharing it. Yes, you could do that. But sometimes that gives you all the feels of accomplishing the thing without accomplishing the thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, correct. Now, that being said, my previous book, Superfans, which you also helped promote a while back, thank you for that. I wrote that book in a single month, November of 2018. So there's this thing called NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writers Month, where every November, writers from all around the world will attempt to complete a book just in that month alone. So what I love about that, it's like all these authors who just are not taking action. It's like, oh, other people are doing it now too. Now there's a start date. Now there's an end date. Like, let's do this. I love that in terms of a structure around actually getting something done that has always been a goal. So NaNoWriMo. So I wrote that book in November of 2018. Didn't finish by the end of November, but I finished on December 6th, which I remember because that was my birthday. So it was a big birthday present to finish. And then that book published in July of 2019. And I publicly shared each day, not that I was writing, right? That would be just share your goal. Hey guys, I'm writing a book. All right, Pat, you got this. Good job. Can't wait to read it. Okay. Like those are the good feels, but that's not really helping me. So I devised a plan to share how many words I was writing every day because I wanted to get better at writing each day that I wrote. And I remember before I wrote that book, I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to share with you for the next 30 days exactly how many words I write on my way to my next book. There's a little bit of a strategy there as well for a marketer. It's to share the thing that you're working on before or as you are working on it. This plants that seed that thing exists. So by the time it's over or done, people want to see the final product. And so there was a little bit of that in there as well. And I asked everybody, how many words do you think I'm going to write on day one? And I gave out some prizes if people got the right number. People were guessing like 4,500, 10,000, 3,000, all these like big numbers. I wrote 150 words on my first day. And then people were like, dang, you suck at writing. But I knew that I just needed to get the wheels going.
Yeah.
And I did this knowing I was not going to do very well in the first day because I had to get out of my own way. And the numbers kept going up and up and up and up. And by the time it was over, this book came out and became a bestseller on Amazon in July of 2019. And we gave it away at my event and stuff, which was pretty cool. So again, having moments of time to surge into something is really key. This is, I don't know if you got into this part in the book too.
Voluntary force functions.
Voluntary force functions, putting yourself in a situation, right? So if there's a crowd of people and we're like, all right, guys, we're going to do this together. Cool. You're purposefully putting yourself in that situation to do it, right? Like when I first started speaking, same thing was like, all right, I'm going to go speak at this event on this date. I signed up for it. It's happening. I better get going. I better learn. And I don't have time to overlearn. That's the other thing about this. Another strategy that I talk about, I got from when I used to row at Cal. So I used to row, obviously, on the lightweight crew, not the heavyweights, obviously. And it's this boat with 8 people, and there's a 9th person on the boat, the coxswain, who's commanding the rowers, right? And I remember rowing in a boat of 8 and racing in my first regatta. And it was the craziest experience because this is the first time I ever really felt the power of something called a power 10. So in racing, in rowing, in crew, a power 10 is where for 10 strokes and 10 strokes alone, you like every rower in the boat will just give it their all for 10 strokes. So the coxswain will set it up, right? You're going and the boats are going, and it's like, how do you go faster than the boats next to you? Well, you have to strategize and figure out when to do a power 10. So the coxswain will be like, all right, guys, here we go. Power 10 in 3 stroke, 2 stroke, 1 stroke, go, go, 10 strokes, just everything you got just for 10 strokes. And when you see a boat implement a power 10 on the water, they're just like a hot knife through butter, dude. They're going so fast. And then they position ahead of the other boats and then they go back into their regular pace. The fun part of the race is like now other people are doing power 10s and it's like, the psychological. But the power 10 is such a fantastic way to contain a heightened surge of energy to move faster in something you're already doing. So if you want to be a master of something, find a version of a power 10 that you can do. This is similar to like a hackathon for coders, right? Let's stay up for 24 hours. Let's build something, get the pizzas and ice cream and Red Bulls because we're staying up to design something in 24 hours and 24 hours alone. That's like their version of a power 10. for me as a podcaster, I remember running these kinds of experiments where, I have a podcast come out every single week, but in certain seasons, I'd be like, all right, everybody, for this week and this week alone, we're going to have one episode per day this week. Little heightened, more energy, more pressure, but bigger results because now there's more hype around it. Now I'm getting more downloads. Now I'm seeing the results of it happen. I started to get ranked. This is how I became the #1 business podcast back in 2011 by running a Power 10 for my podcast. And so the Power 10 strategy is something that we should all do. This is how you just like a lot of writers do this, right? They'll be like, okay, I'm going to go rent a cabin for 2 weeks and just crank it out. Some people work better that way, authors. But man, the Power 10 strategy is huge. Anybody can implement it in anything that they're doing. And it's how you go faster than everybody else.
I love that. I love that.
Like imagine a Power 1000 though. Like people want to like you would die if you were doing a Power 1000, right? Like, so you can't do it forever. That's why it works. It's just for 10 strokes. You can find a little extra in those 10 strokes. Imagine never doing it. Now you're just coasting. All the boats are going faster than you. So find the Power 10s.
Yes. Yes. This principle is, I'm not going to say it's my favorite because there's a recipe here with all of it, but voluntary force functions is so important today more than ever, especially if you have, goals and aspirations that are outside of the norm, where people are controlling what you're doing. We have to create some pressure for ourselves today because there's so much stuff that we could just outsource our attention and our life to. And so purposefully putting something in front of us, having a hard deadline for something, creating something like that so that there's an accountability there. That's been very helpful for me, is like having book deals and like deadlines. Of course, like I get the book done. But also, many other things, whether it's a speaking event that I have or whether it's a show that's coming up, making sure that I'm prepared, that I do my due diligence and I show up ready for the thing.
Right. Like imagine you're a musician, right? What's an example of a voluntary force function? You sign up for open mic night a month from now.
You set a date, like my audio assistant over here set a date for his show, and he's got to do whatever it takes to be ready for that show.
For sure. If you want to be a comedian, go to open mic night. There's other versions of this too. Like I'm a fisherman, and there's a bait that I've always wanted to learn how to use. It's called a jig. It's an artificial bait. It has like a skirt on it. And if you are fishing for bass, jigs are awesome because it has the biggest strike and you can often get bigger bass. But it's hard to learn how to do because there's a certain technique, and like there's baits that are easier to use but just aren't going to get you as big a fish. So when I would go out on the boat fishing, I'd bring my jig, but I'd have all my other rods too. But I was like, okay, I'm going to master the jig and try to get better at it. I'd do a few casts. I get no bites for like an hour. I'd be like, screw this. I'm going to go back to old reliable, my drop shot rig, and I'd start catching bass. Then again, solidifying that I was no good at jigs, or maybe I was never meant to fish with a jig. Maybe I'm just a drop shot fisherman, whatever. So because I really wanted to learn this, I went out on the boat one day and I took nothing except jigs. I literally was forced to only use jigs. What was I going to do? Drive back home? No, I'm going to fish. Yeah. Right. Even a bad day of fishing is better than a day at work. But when I wanted to put it away and put something else on, I couldn't. I was forced. By 2 p.m., I got there at 8 a.m., no bites. 3 p.m., I get my first bite. And it just unlocks this comment. Oh my God. Like it actually worked. Maybe I can do this. And by the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I caught 2 bass on a jig. And now it's my go-to bait. I always use a jig now.
I love that so much. That's a burn the boats type of thing. You got to figure it out. This reminds me of, my youngest son is phenomenal basketball player. He's only 13.
I've heard, yeah.
All right. And he has this really interesting, just unique thing about him. He's ambidextrous, right? So he writes with his left hand, but he throws and shoots. He does pretty much everything else with his right hand. Right? It's just like, what is going on? Apparently, my wife's grandfather was ambidextrous as well. Oh, wow. And so he's got a great, on the basketball court, like amazing that a kid can do, be left-handed and right-handed with finishing at the basket, and he does them both equally, right? And so for me, being there as his competition in between competitions, this was a hole in my game where it's just something that I didn't need to do or didn't think about working on. And so in order for me to get good with my left hand, which I could do it, but it just didn't feel right, I just took a week of practices where I held a bottle in my right hand the entire time, right? And so I'd go, and I know I'm looking crazy at the basketball court. You know, I've got this thing in my hand and I'm awkwardly, but the more I did this, by day 2, it felt so much more natural, right? And it just felt more fluid.
Already by day 2?
By day 2, yeah. Actually, by the end of day 1, it's just like, because your brain and your body figures it out, you know? And so like literally taking my right hand out of the equation, being forced to use my left, helped me to become better with finishing at the rim with my left hand.
I like that. That. Everybody thought you were just thirsty the whole time.
Like, why you put that bottle down, bro? Like, get one of the things that wraps around your head and you just feed you the water while you're doing it. You know?
I like that, dude. Yeah, voluntary force functions are huge. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss had a show on Apple a long time ago where he would put himself in this situation. He was trying to learn how to speak Tagalog, which is the Filipino language. I'm half Filipino myself. I only know the bad words, by the way. And he was set to do an interview on the news, on Filipino news, and he had to speak in Tagalog. And he had a certain amount of time to learn. So was he going to learn every word in the dictionary? No, he just needed to learn the words and how to have a conversation with somebody and just kind of the most basic things. And he was able to do it. And that forced him, knowing that date was coming. He actually helped himself by actually moving in and temporarily living with a Filipino family that only spoke Tagalog, which is another thing. It's like you can't help but learn, right? And I remember when my family and I went to Japan for the first time a couple of years ago, I was trying so hard to like flashcard my way into learning the language, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, arigato gozaimasu. Like it was so bad. But when I was there, dude, and I just had like Google Translate to help me kind of learn these things, it wasn't hard to pick it up literally in the context of being in the place where that stuff was being used. And I was like, oh, arigato gozaimasu. And like all these things, ohayo gozaimasu. Like it just naturally, you learn these things. It's just like how we learn our language just by being around our parents talking all the time, you know? So putting yourself in that environment and setting yourself up for success works really, really well.
Well, you've got the recipe laid out, a recipe for effective voluntary force function, a leap of faith moment, a time-locked commitment, high stakes, a meaningful challenge, rewards on the other end, and you detail what all of these things are, so that we can take control of our minds and give ourselves. Humans, we are so awesome at operating within a box. All right, we just like I want out of the box. I want to think out of the box. Right? I don't want any constraints. I want to be free. But when we have that freedom, what tends to happen is too much, overwhelm, going too far off the reservation. And so being able to create a box for ourselves, that's the key. You have the freedom to create your own box that you can operate in. And that actually, funny enough, creates more freedom. And so you have that laid out for everybody. But I want to ask you about this because when it comes to purposefully putting yourself and giving yourself this kind of high pressure situation where you have to accomplish a thing by, a certain date or whatever the case might be, what about hustle culture? What about burnout? Like if you're putting this pressure on yourself, isn't this going to be in conflict with doing this in a healthful way?
This is why having an amount of time that you set to hustle is important with an end date. I think Gary Vaynerchuk calls it micro hustle, macro patience. Take a small moment of time to hustle on that thing and then reassess whether or not you want to continue or then adjust how you approach it for the next phase once you're there. So case in point, recently I wanted to learn how to do short form video. So YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks. And I had never done that before. I was more in favor of long form video, but I wanted to experiment. And so siloed from everything else, I didn't link to this from anything else. I started a new YouTube channel and I decided to post a video every day. But I was only going to do it for 60 days because when I spoke to a lot of other people, again, when I'm trying to learn how to do something, I talk to other people who've done it before. I started to ask, well, how many days did it take you to kind of learn the ropes and kind of figure things out? And they said, oh, sometimes, it took us 30 days, sometimes a few weeks, a couple people it took a few more months. So I said, okay, I'm going to go daily for 60 days. And I'm just going to open a pack of Pokemon every day. I created a little jingle. Should I open it or should I keep it sealed? Kept it fun. But every day I open a pack. The end, you see if it's a good card or not, and that's the shtick, right? By day 30, my videos were just getting 200 to 300 views each. If I was the old me, I would have said, well, I've dabbled, it's not working. I guess I'm not cut out for it. But the goal wasn't the views. Remember, the goal was to get to 60 days straight and hustle for a period of time before deciding what to do from there. And although I didn't get the views that I wanted on day 30, a few things did happen. I was able to cut my editing time down from 45 minutes to 15 minutes. I had 30 pieces of data that had come in to share with me which videos of the lot were a little bit better than the others and why. And I could go into the retention graphs and start to see. I had a lot of data come in from just quantity, controlled quantity. By day 35, one of those videos hit 750,000 views. And ever since then, all the videos have come up to a point now where across all channels, we're approaching 3 billion views. It's now its own 5-figure business through ad revenue and things that are happening there, brand deals and such. My editing time is down to even 12 minutes a day now, right? And I batch process, so I just do the whole week in one day.
That's per month, 5-figure.
Per month, yeah. I was able to get invited to a Detroit Lions game to open a pack of Pokemon on the field because of this. I saw a DJ take my song and play it in a mix of his in front of 15,000 people. I have had conversations with NBA basketball players and UFC fighters who have now watched my channel, and some NFL players as well. I've gotten invited to a lot of parties that I'm unable to go to, or that was a different part of life, simply by giving it a chance. And hustling for a moment of time, but not forever. And now this thing has blown up and it's become a viral thing. And, that's kind of cool.
3,000 views that's like Gangnam Style, Justin Bieber territory, man.
A video will get, on average, 1 million views after 24 hours now. And it's happening every day. There was one video that saw 35 million views in 2 days.
Unbelievable. I remember when you told us about this idea, just experiment, that's what you were saying. Like, I'm just going to try this thing out.
Controlled experimentation. Yeah. Controlled play.
Of course, we're just like, okay, that's interesting. And you didn't know much about Pokemon yourself at all. But you were just like, I'm just going to do this thing. And it's been so inspiring, to go along with you and to see what you've created. And man, it's just so awesome. And by the way, with this said, again, this isn't about hustle or having to sacrifice our happiness or our comfort. You get plenty of comfort along the way, but you've got to be able to move into that, lean into that discomfort in stages and being strategic about it. Having a mentor, having a guide, you have that with Pat. And you've been that for so many people. You've been that for us. And I appreciate you so much. Another couple of sections in the book, I'm just going to highlight these really quickly. Persist or pivot, when to know. You talk about that. Micromastery, which we've dabbled in a little bit here, but from learning to leading. I got to ask you about this because I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Why is this a part of lean learning?
We've heard this before, that the best way to learn is to teach, but we've never really explored why, and I decided to do so. And I found that even this book itself is a version of what happens when you teach something. I was able to learn a lot more about how I was able to accomplish all these things because I wanted to teach it. And by teaching something, you begin to distill and create frameworks and begin to understand things differently when you know that you're going to share that information with somebody else. Like, I had a friend of mine who plays the ukulele. He gets lessons from professionals. And the professionals had asked him, hey, have you ever taught somebody how to play the ukulele? And he was very surprised by that question because he was like, I'm learning from you. Why are you telling me to teach other people? But they knew that by teaching his son how to play ukulele, it would reinforce, oh, that's how you play a G chord. Oh, that's how you play A minor. Oh, that's because he's teaching it to somebody else. And now it reinforces that, right? And for, entrepreneurs and creators, when you teach stuff, you are forced to, for the purpose of standing out and easier consumption, create frameworks that now redefine how you learn. So the micromastery, something I've always done, but I never really thought about it in that way until I needed to teach this in this book. And now it's made it even easier for me to now approach new things that I do, break them down really easily, because now I have built a framework and a to-do list with that to be able to master things and get faster and have speed run my skill acquisition. So that's why it's important to teach. But even more than that, imagine everybody in the world doing this and supporting one another through the things they learn and helping to better their communities as a result of sharing this information, and not waiting till they're a professor or have a PhD to be able to do this, but to help the other people in your community get better at something or solve problems just simply because you've gone down those paths before. It just would make the whole world a better place. I know that sounds cliche, but this is in my opinion, the most important thing right now with how quickly things are moving. If we don't take control, we will be under somebody else's control.
One of my favorite quotes of all time, I think about it pretty much every day. There's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. The time for lean learning is now. And pick up a copy as of the release of this episode, anywhere that books are sold, or people can go to
leanlearningbook.com. It's my first traditionally published book. I've published 3 other ones. One of them somehow became a Wall Street Journal bestseller, which is cool, self-published. But I mean, you know this. There's just another level at stake here with traditional publishing, and this was a beast. This was a beast, but I also think it was a beast because it's really, really important right now, and I'm just grateful to be here and to share it with y'all. And I hope it at least starts a conversation with you and important ones around you about how to approach the things that you're interested in and how to get good at them and how to have more fun within them as well. I think when you get good at stuff, you have more fun with it, and so I just want everybody to have more fun.
Yes, it's fun era right now, starting today, and one of the biggest lessons was right there at the tail end. Truly, one of the ingredients, one of the aspects of real fulfillment is teaching, is sharing what we know. And so often we handicap ourselves from teaching and giving our gifts because we think that we don't got it all figured out. We're not perfect. We are not there yet. And I guarantee you, wherever you are right now, you are a step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 10 steps ahead of many other people. And just being 2 steps ahead can offer so much value for somebody who's trying to figure something out, whether this is parenting, whether this is in relationship to a product that they're creating, whether this is in relationship to their fitness. Share what you know. It feels so good. It's fulfilling. And we get to learn it twice. We get to learn it thrice. We get to keep learning it again and again as we're teaching.
Yeah.
So you're helping us to really unlock so many of our superpowers with lean learning. And this is a must-have book. Get your copy today, wherever books are sold. The one and only Pat Flynn.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here. And so I want to dig in on your morning routine a little bit more, and why you do some of the things that you do.
I think there's time and attention. So we have a limited amount of both, but the most important thing that we have is not necessarily our time, it's our focused attention.